afternoon, everyone. How is everybody doing today? Awesome. Well, welcome. My name is Abby. I am an animal ambassador at the San Antonio Zoo, and I will be your ghostly host as we talk about animals that creep, crawl, and go bump in the night. But first, has anybody here been to your local San Antonio Zoo? Anybody show of hands? Awesome. Awesome. Well, our zoo is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so that means that we rely on daily admission sales, sales of our memberships, as well as donations from our community, such as yourselves. So when you come and visit us at the San Antonio Zoo, you're continuing to provide world-class care for the animals that we care for, and we'd like to thank you for that. So did anybody get the chance to go through the drive-through zoo this summer? Anybody? I see a couple of hands. Alrighty, well, for those of you who missed it this summer, we are still offering the drive-through zoo option. We are doing drive-through zoo for our Zoo Boo celebration this year, so you can trick or treat from the safety, comfort, air conditioning, maybe heating. It's Texas, we don't know yet, from your car. We are also offering Halloween celebrations throughout the week, so we welcome you to come in your costumes. Come trick or treat with us. We offer dance parties, costume contests, all of that. It's a lot of fun. We would also like to go ahead and give a shout out to Six Flags for having us. We've had an awesome time here, and we hope that you are too. As you guys move throughout the park today, there are going to be signs such as this down in front with these QR codes. You guys are going to be able to scan those with your phone, and they're going to allow you to purchase discounted tickets. We also do have a booth right outside the theater if you guys would like to visit us. Purchase your discount tickets there. We'd love to see you guys soon, so hopefully you guys will come celebrate Halloween with us. But with that, let's go ahead and get started with some of the animal ambassadors that we brought today. So first are going to be some of my favorite kind, which are going to be the feathered variety. So over here on the left-hand side, we have Twig, who is our eastern screeched owl, and Cat. And over here on my right-hand side, this is going to be Justin, and this is Matilda, who is our tawny frogmouth. So first things first, we're going to start over here with Cat and Twig. Twig, who is again our eastern screech owl. So eastern screech owls are a native species. You can find them here in Texas, right here in your backyard. But you have to look pretty hard for them. They are a nocturnal species, which means that they are going to be awake during the night and asleep during the day while we are up and awake. And during the days, they're going to be resting in big, tall trees, usually small knots in trees, where they're pretty well camouflaged. As Twig comes around, you can notice those really pretty feathers, that gray and brown coloration that keeps him hidden from anything that might consider him a snack while he's trying to nap during the day. Now, we usually get a lot of questions about Twig. He's pretty small. People ask, is he a baby? So Twig is actually fully grown at this size, anywhere in his mid to late teens. And he's never going to get bigger than this, but don't let that size fool you. He is an expert hunter. So as Twig comes around, you notice that he's got some pretty killer talons. In fact, Cat does wear protective gear to protect us and the integrity of his nails. Now he's going to use those to not only catch prey, but to hold on to them. He's going to take those talons and he's going to hold on to anything that he might catch during the night. As I mentioned earlier, they are nocturnal hunters, and they are extremely well built for it. Those eyes allow for so much light to enter them while he is hunting at night. It would be like us going outside with a flashlight, is how well he can see. Now, if we had eyes the size of Twigs, all of you kids out there would have eyes about the size of grapefruits, which are oranges, if you can imagine. And adults would have eyes about the size of grapefruits. They take up the majority of his skull, but they're an incredibly important feature for him to continue hunting at night. Now we're going to talk a little bit about Matilda and Justin over here. So very similar to Twig, Matilda, our tawny frogmouth, is also a nocturnal hunter. However, she's going to live in a pretty different area. So tawny frogmouths are going to be native to Australia. And she's going to be a very, very different type of hunter. Whereas Twig is going to really go out at night and hunt for things, Matilda is going to wait for her prey to come to her, which sounds like my kind of predator to me. So Matilda also has those really pretty gray and brown mottled colors. So she's also going to be camouflaged, very similar to Twig. However, instead of hiding her from other predators, it's going to help hide her from her prey. So as things kind of fly or walk by her, she's got this really cool punk rock mohawk. Now that's something called phyloplumes, and they kind of act like whiskers on a cat. They give her a better sense of what's around her, and that way she can kind of sense it better as things fly near her. Now as anything kind of flies towards that mouth and she senses it with those sensory feathers, she can snap out really, really fast and grab it up. Now as Matilda comes around, you'll notice her mouth actually starts right below her eyes and is all yellow on the inside. It's a great adaptation for her as a hunter because that's going to be her main tool to predate or to hunt anything that she might want to eat. Unlike Twig, she's not going to have those long nails and that really strong grip. Like I mentioned earlier, she's a sit and wait predator. She doesn't need to grab anything quite the way that Twig does. So even as Justin comes around with her, you can see that she sits very, very differently. Now both of these birds are incredible hunters, and I talked about earlier, Twig is actually a native species. I also mentioned earlier that Twig is an estimated age, probably in his mid to late teens. So Twig came to us from a rehabilitation center here in Texas. And it's likely that he did suffer an injury when he was much younger, and then was deemed unreleasable by that facility. So that means he couldn't go back out into the wild to be able to hunt by himself or care for himself in the same way that we can provide at our zoo. So for those of you on the audience, we would like to ask that, for those of you that are able, there are things called owl boxes, which you can put in your backyard that allow animals like Twig to be really close to your home. So it's really nice to provide homes for these guys or nesting for these guys because they're a great thing to have around your house. They're actually really, really great pest control, very similar for both of these species, both the tawny frogmouth and the eastern screech owl. They tend to clean up things around our houses that we don't necessarily want. So anybody here have a phobia or a fear of cockroaches? I know a couple of us at the zoo do too. So Twig is actually one of the better known cleanup crews for cockroaches. So if you're able to provide those owl boxes near or around your home, not only will these guys take up some residence hopefully and you'll be able to see them in their natural habitat, but they might also help you clean up all of the things that you don't necessarily want around your house. So I'd like to say thank you to our feathered ambassadors. We can go ahead and give them a round of applause. Thank you guys. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Twig is a natural kind of cleanup crew. He's going to clean up all the things that we don't necessarily want around our houses. So those cockroaches, like I mentioned, but also things like mice do tend to be a favorite prey item for this species. So we ask that you be careful when you are gardening or using any kind of pesticide around your homes or insecticide in your gardens, because the runoff can really, really affect this species. And unfortunately, they're a species that we want to have around. They're incredibly important to our ecosystem, and they're a natural sign of how healthy the ecosystem is. So it would be amazing to see one in your backyard. I, for one, would be a huge fan, and I hope that you would too. So in the next few minutes, we're going to have our next animal ambassador out. He's really, really cool. He's one of our favorites to talk about. Come on, I heard a couple awes. Let's hear a couple more. Come on. This is Hogan, and he is our tamandua, our southern tamandua, also known as a lesser anteater. Now, when we say lesser, we don't necessarily mean less than. We just mean smaller. For those of you that have come to visit us at the San Antonio Zoo, we house the cousins of tamanduas, which are going to be the giant anteaters. These are anteater species as well, but obviously much, much smaller than their cousins. And that's because they tend to be an arboreal species, which means that they spend a lot of the time up in the trees. As he walks around, you notice some really cool adaptations for climbing trees. The first is that really cool long tail. That long tail is also prehensile, which means that it can support his body weight as he climbs. And it acts as an extra limb in case he has any slip-ups. He can protect himself before he falls. Now, if you also notice as Hogan walks around, he kind of walks on the sides of his feet, kind of like a bulldog. We like to say kind of like a guy who Definitely spent way much time, or too much time on his arms at the gym and skipped the leg day. And that's where he gets his name. He's named after Hulk Hogan because of those really beefy arms up there. But as he walks around, he walks on the sides of his knuckles, and that is to protect some killer claws up there. So not only does Hogan use those claws to climb really tall trees, but he's also going to use those to tear apart insect nests and termite mounds, which are going to be the main staple of his diet. Hogan also enjoys other insects. Crickets tend to be a favorite, as well as mealworms. At the San Antonio Zoo, we also feed something called insectivore, which you can see in this tube as Hogan comes to eat, which is almost like a ground up pellet version of those insects that provide a lot of nutrients for him. And also, as he eats out of that tube, you notice that really, really long tongue. So that tongue is about 18 inches long, which is incredible. And it's going to be his main tool when he does dig apart things like termite nests and insect mounds. He's going to stick that long, long tongue down in there, which is covered in barbs, which makes it sticky. And he's going to be able to eat insects that way. Tamandos are known to be able to eat up to 9,000 ants a day. Yeah, so as we talked about earlier, this species is also a really good cleanup crew. They mitigate and they moderate the amount of ant populations that are in their native area of South America. Now, Hogan's really cool. He was born at the San Antonio Zoo to a first-time mom who didn't exactly know what she was doing, as you can imagine. She's gotten a lot better since then. However, since Hogan was her first baby, she wasn't sure what to do, so he was actually hand-reared by our staff at the San Antonio Zoo. And he's been an ambassador ever since. So it just goes to show not only the kind of round-the-clock care that we put into these animals, but also generally the amount of heart that we really love these guys. And we dedicate our careers to them. The conservation is a really important staple at the San Antonio Zoo. We have some resources on our website for those of you who'd like to learn a little bit more about the conservation programs that we are involved in and how you can help. We'll go ahead and say goodbye to Hogan. Thank you for coming out. I'll go ahead and give him a big round of applause too. So as I mentioned earlier, Hogan was hand-reared by our staff at the San Antonio Zoo. And it's really important that we spend a lot of time with him as an ambassador. This is his job, where he comes out and he meets all sorts of people in very different places. And a big part of that is something called positive reinforcement, or operant conditioning training. Now what that means is that we ask for a very specific behavior, and if they do that, then they get a reward that they really like. For Hogan, that could be anything from crickets to mealworms, to avocado tends to be a favorite of his as well. So it would be like if I said, hey, I need you to clean your room, for all of our kids out there, and if you do that, then I'll give you ice cream. The likelihood of you doing that is probably going to go up because you're going to want that treat afterwards. And it's the same with our animal ambassadors at the San Antonio Zoo. It's always really important that they love what they're doing and are comfortable when doing it. So we're going to go ahead and bring out our next animal ambassador as well. This is also a favorite to talk about because they are so ecologically important. So this is the lovely Scarlet, and she is a red-tailed boa. Now, believe it or not, Scarlet is actually maybe the 4th largest animal on our animal ambassador team. So we have snakes even larger than her. Now, red-tailed boas are a South American native species, named for the reddish, tannish coloration of the bases of their tails. Now, similar as we talked about earlier with Twig and Matilda, she is incredibly well camouflaged to her environment. Those really pretty greens and olivey tones and browns are going to keep her really well hidden as she slides across in the underbrush. So they're going to keep her camouflaged as she comes up upon her prey. Now, we also get a lot of questions about poisonous or venomous animals, so I'm going to go ahead and give you a quick tip to distinguish the two. So poisonous would be if you bit it and then you got sick. Venomous is when they bite you and then you get sick. And Scarlet, as well as all of our animal ambassadors, are not venomous animals. She is a constrictor species. So what that means is that she's going to reach out and she's going to grab something, usually about the size of a large rat, tends to be one of her favorites. And she's going to squeeze down really hard, give it a nice big hug, until she can swallow it. And that's how she's going to hunt her prey. Now these guys have incredible teeth, about, I want to say less than 100 backwards curving teeth. So as she bites down on something, they're like fish hooks, and in fact they have a really, really strong bite force. And that way that prey can't get away as she squeezes down on it. Now we get a lot of questions about how much or how big of an item that she can swallow. So snakes can open their mouths and swallow something about 4 times the size of their heads, which would be similar to us swallowing a watermelon, which I don't recommend to anybody here. Now it's kind of a misnomer that snakes can unhinge their jaws to swallow something. They have incredible ligaments on the sides of their mouths that allow them to stretch their mouth out wide. I would also like to point out that Scarlet is actually a surrendered pet. We like to talk a lot about pet care, especially on the Animal Ambassador team at the San Antonio Zoo, because we do get a lot of animals that come from homes that weren't quite ready to provide for their care. So it's all fun and games when you have a baby snake that's less than a foot long and maybe a 20-gallon tank at home, and all's good. And then she starts to grow. Now Scarlet is only about 7 to 8 feet long at this time, but this species can grow up to 12 to 13 feet and weigh over 70 pounds. So it's always really, really important that we're making sure that we're doing our research before bringing these animals home and into our lives so that we can provide them the correct and the adequate care that they need and that they deserve. But Scarlet is one of our favorites at the San Antonio Zoo. Like I said, she's only the 4th largest snake in our Animal Ambassador team. So for those of you that want a chance to see our largest snake on our ambassador team, for those of you that aren't too creeped out by snakes already, we welcome you to come back and visit us at our 6 p.m. show, where you get the chance to see one of our larger snakes. As I mentioned earlier, we know they're scary, they look a little intimidating, but snakes are so incredibly important to our environment. Very similar to twig or eastern screech owl, they're great indicators of how well an environment is doing. Oftentimes when we see them around our houses, we get a little scared, but that just means that the snake is helping decrease maybe some of the things that you don't want inside your home. Things like mice and maybe other creepy crawlies that are more appropriate for the Halloween season and not necessarily inside our houses. So we'd like to go ahead and thank you guys so much for coming out today. We absolutely loved having you. We hope that you learned a little bit more about some of our creepy crawly and really cool animals. We invite you to stick around if you'd like. We will answer any questions, maybe get a couple of pictures of Scarlet. In the meantime, we also remind you that there are these signs with the QR codes for you to check out any discount tickets for those of you who'd like to come visit us again at the San Antonio Zoo. Once again, thank you guys for coming out. Have a great rest of your day.